Jin Maury seems to be just another average high schooler who lives in modern-day Korea. But in reality, he's an insanely strong guy and a skilled martial artist. He lives alone in a house, and the closest kin he had was his grandfather, who went missing when he was young. Despite having a problematic childhood, he turned out to be a very good major, and just an individual who, despite having incredible strength, never abuses it. Back in the present, Jin Maury, a high school student, wakes up and dreams of his grandfather, who told him to behave well and go far. After a few minutes, he realizes he's running late for an event and hastily leaves on his bicycle, nearly colliding with a lady on the way. Today marks the beginning of the National Martial Arts Tournament for students, the god of high schools, and the preliminaries are taking place at Korg Arena. Some students mention that a few of their classmates have 2 front-row tickets. While it's being streamed online, there's nothing quite like seeing it in person. The entire city of Seoul is buzzing with excitement for the event. During the Joya and Gyeongsang preliminaries, there were boys who drove the girls wild with their attractiveness. Han Dawi has just finished his shift at the supermarket and, upon counting the money he earned, decides to take on more shifts to make extra cash. Meanwhile, Jin Maury is rushing through traffic trying to reach his destination. He witnesses a thief on a motorcycle snatch a lady's purse. This lady desperately needs the money to pay for her grandson's cancer operation. Unable to bear the sight, Maury starts chasing the thief on his bicycle. Along the way, he accidentally collides with a girl heading to Korg, Yu Mira, who was watching some men practicing martial arts. The girl becomes furious as her glasses are shattered, and she throws a stick at Maury, causing him to fall off his bike. Maury explains that he did it because of the thief. The thief thinks he has escaped Maury, but Maury reappears behind him with the girl on his bicycle, both determined to catch the thief. The thief feels confident because he has been a motorcyclist for 10 years, but the determined young pursuers make him realize that escaping from them won't be as straightforward as he thought. Daiwi, the supermarket guy, learns about the situation thanks to a rapper who shared the lady's story on an Instagram livestream and also wants to catch the thief. The girl launches herself at the thief, using a stick as a sword and employing a technique called Moon Sword number 17. However, just when she is about to reach him, she doesn't look, and her face collides with a warning sign. The thief thought he had escaped, but the supermarket employee punched him in the face and snatched the purse back. By chance, the 3 young individuals were all headed to the same place, the tournament, so Maury gave them a ride on his bicycle. The tournament at Korg Arena, the second venue for the preliminaries, begins. Here, they can't trust anyone, and their only friends are their fists. Maury thanks Daewi for helping with the thief, and the 3 young participants introduce themselves. They will all be competing in the God high schools. Mira asks Maury to reimburse her for her glasses since she hasn't been able to see properly since arriving, but Daewi tells her that the thief is to blame, and she should ask him for the money. In the arena, there are all sorts of participants using various martial arts styles, all recruited by the event organizers. In the tournament, the use of any artifact or fighting style is allowed, with no time limits or prohibited weapons. Victory is achieved by incapacitating the opponent or making them surrender. Subsequently, regional preliminaries will be held to select the representatives for the national tournament in a month. Competitors of both genders participate, each wearing a bracelet that monitors their vital signs. Nanomachines injected into them verify their real-time condition, and any injuries they sustain will be treated by a specialized team. Everything is arranged, so they should give it their all without worries. The winner of the preliminaries and the tournament can request any wish from the organization, such as cash, a house, a trip, or other reasonable things. After explaining all the rules in detail, it's time for the fight. Initially, everyone must fight together, with no assigned opponents, and the last one standing will be the winner. It's a kind of battle royale, where competitors fight until only the truly exceptional remain. The strongest focus on checking the vital signs of their opponents to eliminate the weaker ones first. If they don't win, they don't survive. Among the talented fighters are Maury, Han, and Mira Yu. Despite not having eaten all day, Maury manages to defeat a group of men who approach him. His goal is to win in the hopes of one day facing the blonde man who recruited him, with the aspiration of becoming strong enough to beat him. Finally, a latecomer arrives, and owing to his history, he's the favorite to win, Kang Man-seok. He has just come out of the reformatory and has 20% less HP than the rest of the fighters remaining. Kang surprises everyone by attacking swiftly and skillfully. Mira Yu attempts to attack him with her sword, but he dodges all her attacks. Nevertheless, Mira Yu doesn't give up and employs Moon Technique number 1 inch to kick him. Kong grabs her leg and throws her to the ground. Maury intervenes, but Kong forcefully throws him to the ground as well. Maury gets up, stating that if Kong didn't hold back, he won't either. A government group is investigating what happened on the island and is examining an aerial photo of the area. The question arises whether King Kong exists and if they are hiding it, but with great concern, they conclude it's related to Charyeok. At that moment, an intruder alert sounds, and the first thing they do is isolate the president. Park Moo-jin exits the elevator and introduces himself as the Minister of the Republic of Korea. Moo-jin calls the organizers of the God High Schools and informs them that he has accomplished the objective he had planned. He states that he will return for the next round of the tournament. The person who managed to defeat Kong was Yu Mira, who is upset because her sword was taken away. Mira confronts Mira for attacking him, and Mira confesses that she mistook him as she wasn't wearing her glasses. The nanomachines used have advanced technology and can heal wounds, which is remarkably surprising. Mira was heading home, and Maury lived in the same direction, so she felt like he was following her. When she turned around, Daewoo was also there, as he lived in the same direction too. They had no choice but to strike up a conversation since they got along well. Maury asked them why they were participating in the tournament. He mentioned that he did it to become stronger. Han did it for the money, and Mira wanted to restore her family's dojo. Maury pointed out that she shouldn't let them take her sword, but when Mira turned around, Maury had her sword in his hand. They began to argue, and in a careless moment, Maury threw the sword into the lake. Mira asked him to please disappear from her sight. Mira's father had asked her to find a successor one day, and since then, she had promised to restore the dojo and not let the moonlight techniques disappear. She gave up everything to someday find a strong successor. That was her only wish. Maury returned with a flashlight to help Mira find the sword, as it was the last thing she had from her father. Daewoo arrived with a big spotlight to assist as well, and fortunately the lake wasn't deep. The second round of the Seoul preliminary tournament begins, and the winner will advance to the National God of High School tournament, where the strongest fighters compete. The question is, who will emerge victorious and take the first step toward fulfilling their wish? Before the matches start, everyone is practicing, reading, and even sleeping. They have a small issue with Kong before it begins, as he confronts one of the competitors, and Maury can't stand it, considering him a disrespectful competitor. The first match is between Yu Mira and Han Daekyol, and the winner is Mira. The second match is Jin Maury against the Beast, and the winner is Maury, using Taekwondo with punches. In the eighth match, Han Daewoo faces Yes Man, and the winner is Daewoo. The next match is between Go Gamdo and Kong Manseok, a practitioner of Tai Chi and another of Northern Taekwondo. Gamdo doesn't hold back and does his best to win. However, Kong starts predicting his moves. Gamdo calms himself and starts to breathe, as calmness and balance are the foundation of Tai Chi. Despite that, Kong attacks him with the same force. Gamdo shows no signs of giving up, and Kong begins to break his arms, demanding that he beg for his life. Maury restrains himself at first, but he eventually can't bear it and kicks Kong. Subsequently, the organizers arrive and declare that interfering in another match is prohibited and against the rules. They were about to take Maury away when Kong stands up and claims that he's not the same as before. Then, he remembers something from his past, the day he was offered power, Charyeok, but was denied it, being called a fool. They start fighting again, and Maury manages to defeat Kong. At that moment, Park Moo-jin, the main organizer of the tournament, arrives. Maury will be punished, and they will announce to the public what his punishment will be. In a church, a kind of sect discusses that the time has come to distribute the will of their god. Gamdo is mentally and physically weakened, while Kong is completely traumatized by the way he was defeated. Neither of them has the ability to fight again. The organizers are considering the best way to punish Maury, and Moo-jin examines the boy's record, seeing that his grandfather is Jin Tae-jin. For this reason, they don't disqualify Maury, and want to find out if he is genuine. The match will take place in the combat ring in front of the entire audience. Moo-jin gives Maury some fruits to help him recover lost energy. Meanwhile, the next match is between Yu Mira and Ma Miseon, the only two women in the tournament. At first, Miseon has the upper hand as she is a world champion in wrestling and wants to win to have any man she desires. During the fight, Misaon throws Mira's weapon into the audience, but Mira claims that won't be an impediment to using its edge. She employs Moon Technique number 5 inches without a sword and defeats Misaon, becoming the only woman left in the tournament. Maury's punishment will be to fight one of the organizers, and if he defeats them, he can return to the tournament. Maury insists on fighting Judge R and refuses to face Judge Q, throwing a tantrum. Mujin tells him that the selected person is him, and Maury can't do anything about it. Maury invites him to take off his glasses to start the fight right there, and receives a tremendous blow. Although it seems like he didn't learn his lesson, and challenges him to hit him again. Daiwi and Mira return home, wondering what happened to Maury when Maury appears behind them, eating bananas. Mira scolds him for his recklessness, but Maury responds that his family motto is, "Do whatever you want," as his grandfather taught him. One of the organizers informs Mujin that Elder Na Bongchim warned that it was too early, so the fruits were locked up, and their consumption could be dangerous for an ordinary human. Mujin decides to confirm if Maury is genuine. Meanwhile, Maury tells his friends that he has to face a very strong referee to continue in the competition. Maury arrives home and eats a peach that falls to the floor, leaving him unconscious and vomiting blood. Daiwi visits his friend with cancer, who tells him that he now has a more expensive treatment and his sister is working double shifts to help him. Like Daiwi, he wishes for his friend's recovery. The next match is between Han Daiwi and Baek Sundahul. Baek entered the tournament to prove that the mind surpasses violence. During the fight, Baek predicts every move of Daiwi. Despite Baek's strategic strikes, Daiwi rises in pain and uses his best techniques to render his opponent unconscious, becoming the winner. Maury's fate will be decided by the results of the yet-to-come match. Finally, Maury arrives at the tournament running after having strange dreams. They announce the start of the match, and if Maury takes down Judge Q, he will win. Maury approaches his opponent, snatches his glasses, gives him a shove, and the judge falls to the ground. The judge gets angry and starts fighting with Maury, unleashing a power that summons a higher being, possibly a god or a demon, which attacks Maury. When he is about to be defeated, the organizers arrive and restrain Judge Q. Maury is clearly the winner, and the judge has his salary suspended for 3 months due to his recklessness. Mujin confirms that Maury is the grandson of Jin Taejin. In the Seoul preliminaries, only the top 4 competitors remain: the successor of the Moonlight Sword style, Yu Mira, the master of full contact karate, Han Daiwi, the user of renewal taekwondo, Jin Maury, and the last Brazilian jiu-jitsu fighter, Beyond Jaehee. Over the weekend, Han Daiwi will face Yu Mira. Mira is confident she will win, just like Maury, but she's disappointed that she can only fight one of them, as she wishes both of them would win, so she could face them both. A wealthy man parks his car in front of the 3 young fighters and tells Mira that he lives only to meet her. Surprisingly, he proposes marriage to her, and the 3 young ones scream in surprise. The man is Seonjin, known for being the most attractive and strong fighter, as well as a young entrepreneur representing the country's sports entertainment. He falls in love with Mira at first sight, and sees her as a diamond in the rough due to her great beauty, astonishing intelligence, and incredible potential. He has studied everything related to the Moonlight Sword technique, and wishes for Mira and her fighting style to be recognized, with a future together. Mira accepts his marriage proposal, and her cousin, who is like her younger sister, is excited about the wedding details, such as decorations, dresses, and the honeymoon. Although many believed that the Moonlight Sword technique had died the day her father passed away, her uncle promised to protect it and never abandon her father's teachings. However, her uncle was not as competent as her father, and his students quit. Mira is the only one capable of giving a future to the Moonlight Sword. Mira's uncle questions Seonjin about why he wants to marry Mira if she's just a child, and Seonjin responds that he sees in her a diamond in the rough. His plan is to turn the Moonlight Sword into a respected martial art, similar to karate or judo, and do everything in his power to even make it considered an Olympic sport. His greatest desire is for Mira to be happy. Maury, on the other hand, is in line to buy a burger and overhears some teenage girls talking about Seonjin's wedding. Maury goes to Mira's house to question why she's getting married, but Mira angrily responds that it's none of his business. Maury notices that something isn't right as Mira doesn't seem happy, and he suspects she might be hiding something. Additionally, Mira's fiancé gives him a bad vibe, and Maury theorizes that he might be kidnapping women and keeping them in a basement to later sell and get rich. Daiwi tries to make Maury understand that it's not his problem, and that he shouldn't meddle in other people's lives or decisions. Mira, despite being ready for her wedding with her dress, hairstyle, and makeup all set, still doesn't seem happy. Her uncle watches her from a corner and recalls that she has always been a good girl who used to pretend she didn't want typical teenage things. He knows that Mira doesn't really want to get married. Finally, Mira's uncle pleads with Seonjin to cancel the wedding, but Mira interrupts the conversation to assert that this is what she wants. If Seonjin will give her the recognition she seeks for her technique, that's all she needs. Despite knowing that Mira is using him, Seonjin doesn't care, as he will also benefit from the situation. Mira's cousin is saddened by not realizing the truth, as she only wanted Mira to be happy. She tells Maury everything, and he tries to stop the wedding, but security doesn't allow him access and threatens him if he continues to insist. The church revealed to Seonjin their true intention. Obtain the sacred sword that even God obeys, and the hand that can draw out its power. This is what he was truly seeking by marrying Mira, and that's why he doesn't mind if she's using him, as he is also using the situation for his own purposes. Maury tries to fight against the security guards, but Daewoo arrives to save him. Although Daewoo doesn't like meddling in other people's lives, he's willing to support his friends at any time. Together, they try to stop Mira and Seonjin's wedding. During the confrontation, Seonjin makes several comments that unsettle Mira and speaks ill of her friends. Daewoo faces off against Seonjin in a fight, while Maury tries to convince Mira to pursue her dreams and fight for what she truly desires, instead of marrying out of obligation. Mira throws a punch at Maury, but her uncle steps in to take the blow, urging her to stop and do what truly makes her happy. Finally, Seonjin reveals his true intention. He wants the Moonlight Sword and its successor to gain more power. He summons a creature similar to the judges and starts destroying the place. He attacks Mira, who uses Seonjin's sword to strike him so hard that he becomes unconscious. Although Seonjin takes her father's sword, Mira realizes that her father's spirit lives within her. Meanwhile, Daewoo's friend who had cancer is in critical condition, and some guys mock him while he's at work. Daewoo reacts with anger and punches them forcefully. The next day at the tournament, Daewoo takes out his frustration on Mira and reopens her wound. Mira weakens and loses a lot of blood, and they have to pull Daewoo away to prevent him from ending her life. Daewoo doesn't seem to be the same as before and acts like someone without feelings, as he is about to lose his friend Woo Sung-tae. 2 years ago, Daewoo remembered how, for some reason, he used to constantly find himself fighting with his friend Sung-tae. It seemed like his friend's situation was having a devastating impact on his mood. The competition for Team B in the semifinals begins with Jin Maury facing off against Byeon Jae-hee. The competition turns out to be quite straightforward for Maury, who defeats his opponent in less than 5 minutes. Now, in the final of the preliminaries, Maury will face Han Daewoo to determine who will earn the right to participate in the God of High School National Tournament. After the fight, Maury visits Mira, who is feeling better though still a bit sad and weak from her defeat. Mira comments that she now knows what Daewoo is really like, and that fists never lie. As for Woo Sung-tae, Daewoo's seriously ill friend, he is still alive but in a very unstable condition, alternating between periods of wakefulness and sleep. The day of the grand final of the preliminaries arrives, where the top participants will face off to determine who will advance to the next level of the tournament. Daewoo and Maury start the fight intensely, attacking each other. Daewoo manages to land a solid blow on Maury, who doesn't forgive him and delivers a triple kick that injures Daewoo. Daewoo gets back on his feet and mentions that he never considered Maury and Mira as friends. Then he lands a strong punch on Maury. Meanwhile, Mira is discharged from the hospital and notices a commotion outside a room. Woo Sung-tae has passed away. In the competition, Daewoo continues to fight with all his strength because he made a deal with Munji. If he advances to the semifinals and finals, his friend will be treated with nanomachines. Daewoo hits Maury hard, and although Maury falls to the ground, he manages to get back up. Munji informs Daewoo of his friend's death. Daewoo begins to recall his friendship with Sung-tae, who was the only one to step into a fight to help him. From that day on, a beautiful friendship based on trust was born. Back to the fight, Maury attacks with intensity, but Daewoo dodges and blocks his punches. Maury was about to kick Daewoo in the face when Mira arrives and hands him a note written by his friend for Daewoo. Daewoo reads it and hands it to Mira to keep. Daewoo continues the fight, but he's not fighting to gain anything anymore. He's doing it for fun. He enjoys himself like never before, and even though he doesn't win, he relishes in the defeat. He accepts defeat gracefully. Daewoo finally acknowledges that Maury and Mira are his friends. Despite sometimes acting like idiots or being intense, they will always be his friends. Maury's grandfather, Taejin, finds himself in the forest with the sect, who insist that the time has come for him to fulfill his role, which the heavens entrusted to him. However, Taejin refuses, as his family motto is "do as you please," and he doesn't want to do what the sect is asking of him. The men in robes are determined to find an alternative way to fulfill their purpose. Meanwhile, in all regions of the country, the preliminaries have concluded, and the National God of High Schools tournament is set to take place in 2 weeks. A small adjustment has been made to the tournament rules, where the top 3 from each nation will form teams. In the Korg arena, 2 fighters, Yu Mira and Byeon Jae-hee, compete for the 3rd spot. Mira emerges as the victor using the Moonlight Sword technique, and thus she will join Miro and Daewoo in the national tournament. The organizers have analyzed the results of the winners from each region and have noticed that in every group, there is someone with potential as a key. Meanwhile, the issues with Nox continue to escalate, and Moonji calls upon the 6 to find a solution, as more of them disappear or die each day due to Nox's actions. Maury is excited to compete alongside his friends, but also feels disappointed because he won't be able to fight against them anymore, which helped him become stronger. As they cross the street together, Maury senses the presence of an elderly person who then mysteriously disappears. On the other hand, the 6 gathers with Moonji, who summons them using a card. However, it turns out that Moonji was actually a double, and the 6 attacks the double. Nabongchim expresses interest in Taejin's grandson participating in the tournament, and Taejin's grandson offers to be his disciple. Later, Moonji mentions that Nox has tried to communicate with Taejin. At that moment, the sky lights up, and a massive sword emitting a powerful presence appears in the sky, pointing directly towards Taejin. Far from the battlefield, we see Yumira doing some shopping, trying to lead a normal adult life. She unexpectedly runs into the commentator, who is with his family. He mentions that he made it to the national tournament on his own merit, and not due to a change in the rules. However, he believes that he still hasn't reached the full potential of the Moonlight Sword. In his office, Moonji questions Daewoo about why he intends to continue competing after the death of his friend. Daewoo responds that he has some unfinished business, and that his friend asked him to fulfill his wishes. Additionally, Daewoo takes the opportunity to ask Moonji about supernatural beings and the strength that some competitors can possess, to which Moonji explains that it's related to Charyuk. Jin Mori, determined not to give any advantages, immersed himself fully in his training. However, in the midst of his concentration, his attention was diverted when he noticed some children in distress. A balloon had gotten stuck high up in a tree, out of the reach of the little ones. Jin, without hesitation, rushed to their aid and managed to retrieve the balloon. But unfortunately, in the process of his good deed, he twisted his ankle. At that critical moment, Na Bongchim appeared, trying to earn his trust. The commentator tried to give advice to Mira. In this tournament, you'll encounter people with unimaginable power. Right now, you're only thinking of facing them with strength. It's normal to want to strengthen yourself, but when you encounter greater strength, channel your emotions into the sword. He also shared a dark secret. He had gone blind due to the Moonlight Sword. As he left the scene with his family, a Nox assassin appeared and ruthlessly killed him. The first match began, pitting Jin Mori against Na Gideon. The latter, with enthusiasm, attempted to use a technique that Na Bongchim had taught him. However, his lack of skill and understanding of the technique left him immobilized in the midst of the fight, making him an easy target for Na Gideon. The result was a tremendous beating that left everyone astonished. It was a tournament debut that no one expected. The second match featured Han Daewoo versus Jin Pengguang, the oldest fighter in the tournament. Pengguang recalled how everyone used to mock him for his age and because he consistently failed exams. He had promised Zhang Jiangmi that he would never give up. Pengguang unleashed his Charyuk technique brutally on Daewoo, but Daewoo countered with equal intensity using his Seryu technique, which proved devastating for the elderly fighter. Victory went to Daewoo. In the third match of the National God of High School tournament, Mira faces off against a competitor named Byeon Jae-hee from the Chungcheongbuk team. Initially, Mira is reluctant to use her Moonlight Sword technique, fearing the loss of her vision, as happened to her father. However, after receiving some advice from her uncle and recalling the commentator's words, she decides to harness her power to win the match. The fight is intense, and Mira ultimately unleashes the Moonlight Sword with determination. She manages to defeat Jae-hee and secures victory in the second match, winning the series for the Seoul team. Meanwhile, outside the tournament, Nox has kidnapped Judge Q and confronts him. Although Judge Q displays impressive resistance and defends himself bravely, the Nox members possess a regenerating god and appear to be in an advantageous position in the fight. The fate of the competitors in the National God of High School tournament hangs in the balance, and the threat from Nox continues to grow. El National God of High School tournament continua with more exciting battles and revelations. After Daiwi's victory in his match, Team Seoul has advanced to the next round, and Mira has also won her match, securing her position in the competition. Now, the focus shifts to the other teams and their matches. In the match between Gyeongsangnam-do and Jeollabuk, Jaegil-taek achieves a quick victory over John Jugok, a famous blacksmith. However, interference from one of Jugok's companions causes trouble, and Daiwi is about to intervene before the commentator stops him. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Judge Q and the referees fight valiantly against the Nox priests, but the priests manage to retreat and cause a massive explosion on the scene. This situation increases tension in the tournament and reveals that Nox remains a significant threat. Regarding the internal threat in the tiger's belly and the mysterious disappearance of Taejin, Munji is investigating these matters to determine if there is a traitor among them and how they can confront Nox. The National God of High School tournament promises more excitement and challenges as competitors use their Chariok and special abilities to advance in the competition and protect their interests. The second match of Group A in the national tournament begins, pitting Cheongcheongnam against Jeollanam. Meanwhile, the Seoul team watches their opponents closely, recognizing their strength. However, Maury can't help but focus his attention on a young man who is wearing a uniform similar to that of his grandfather. Ilpyo and Maury meet, with Maury's fan revealing that he has been observing Maury since the preliminaries and admires his skills. The two briefly engage in a battle but then stop. Ilpyo wears the symbol of a tiger on the back of his military jacket, the same symbol that Maury's grandfather, Jin Taejin, had. Maury inquires why he wears that symbol, and Ilpyo shares his story. 14 years ago, Park Ilpyo's father passed away, and his earliest memory is of his father's funeral day. Afterward, he recalls seeing his mother's back as she left, leaving him alone in an unfamiliar place with unfamiliar people. Jin Taejin crossed paths with him and handed him a book of secret Taekyon techniques since he was a friend of his grandfather. Ilpyo's grandfather had dedicated his entire life to studying Taekyon and recorded his own techniques in that book. He knew that Ilpyo would be just as honorable as he grew up. The conversation between Maury and Ilpyo continues, and at one point, Ilpyo saves Maury from a surprise attack by someone else. Taek warns that individual, named Taek, not to involve innocent people in his issues. Meanwhile, Judge Q tries to attack Munji in his office for not informing him that Simbongsa's family, the commentator, was still alive. However, Munji, known for his recklessness, receives a 9-month salary suspension as punishment. Then, Judge Q encounters Daiwi and asks him to train him to acquire a chariok. In return, Daiwi offers him free daily meals since he works at a restaurant. Maury remembers his 9th birthday, the day his grandfather Taejin left. Although he didn't want his grandfather to leave him alone, he understood it was necessary to protect him. Now on his birthday, Maury still misses his grandfather. His friends Daiwi and Mira come to celebrate his birthday and arrange a picnic on the terrace. Maury understands the importance of friendship and how his friends will always support him, no matter the situation. On the day of the tournament, Maury receives a letter with a map and a photo of his injured grandfather, setting off a race against time. Meanwhile, tensions escalate during the semi-finals of the national tournament as Jeju and Seoul face off, but Maury has yet to arrive. With Daiwi suspended, Mira finds herself alone in the ring, and if Maury doesn't make it in time, Mira will face disqualification. The excitement grips the tournament as the fates of the characters intertwine. In the first match of the semi-finals, Mira faces off against Lee Marin, a competitor from Jeju. Marin surprises everyone by removing his black robe and revealing that he has applied a copious amount of sunscreen to his body. Quite disgusting. During the battle, Marin uses the sword that once belonged to Mira, but it changes color to silver. Eventually, the sword comes under Marin's control as it considers Mira as its master. Meanwhile, Maury arrives at the location provided in the letter and finds his grandfather unconscious. However, his grandfather appears to behave strangely and starts laughing, indicating that Maury had been set up. the place suddenly explodes, and a man named Feilong appears. Feilong has captured the grandson of the legendary Taejin and plans to confront him. Maury fights against multiple copies of Feilong at the location, but eventually falls into the basement. There he discovers that some of the tournament competitors are part of the Nox organization, which aims to ruin God High School. On the other hand, Daiwi, who is trying to find Maury, encounters the injured Kwang and rescues him. However, one of Kwang's companions attacks him, and Daiwi gets caught up in a fight. Finally, Tech appears and asks Daiwi to stop interfering. In the ring, Mira is injured by Li Marin, but a voice offers her Charyok called Lu Bu Fengxian. Mira awakens with new powers and manages to defeat Marin, becoming the winner of the match. Mira is on the verge of unconsciousness, but at that moment, Maury arrives and saves her. In the second match of the semifinals, Maury faces Na Hensong and manages to defeat him, unleashing his inner tiger in the process. Munji admits that the tiger raised another tiger. 4 years ago, Ilpyo participated in the National Martial Arts Tournament, and Seongyeon approached him to ask why he was so determined to become stronger. Ilpyo replied that he had to fulfill a promise and that he needed to be strong to do so. On the other hand, Taek also participated in that tournament and defeated Seongyeon. However, unsatisfied with just winning, he broke her legs, forcing her to undergo rehabilitation to walk again. Although Seongyeon eventually managed to recover and walk again, she abandoned martial arts. One day, Ilpyo couldn't bear to see Taek behave that way and confronted him, demanding an apology. This fight marked a rift in their relationship. Ilpyo joined God High School with the hope of winning the tournament and using the prize to heal Seongyeon's legs, allowing her to return to martial arts. This goal closely resembled the situation Daewoo had faced before. Munji reveals that the people from Jeju they faced in the tournament were not real, but the results still stand, and Nox was responsible for this trickery. Nox is an organization that believes in only one god and seeks to eliminate all others, including those who use Charyok. Taejin was kidnapped by Nox because of his immense strength. Munji offers Maury information about his grandfather if he manages to gain enough power to win God High School. Meanwhile, Taek encounters Nox members and reveals that although he worked for them, he killed Feilong and intends to keep the key. The semi-final of the tournament begins, with the team from Seoul facing Jeollanam-do. In the first match of the semi-finals, Han Daewoo faces Park Seunga. They both start launching attacks, but Daewoo becomes destabilized after receiving a precise blow to the ear from Seunga. However, Daewoo recovers and counterattacks, ultimately knocking down Seunga and winning the match. Seongyeon approaches Ilpyo and tells him that she now understands why he's fighting in the tournament, but advises him that he should fight for himself and not just to save her. Sang Mandeok, the leader of Nox, is murdering tournament participants and reveals that he organizes these tournaments to awaken the dormant key. Munji tries to stop him, but Mandeok uses magical runes to summon a god who hurls a gigantic sword towards the ring. In the second match of the semi-finals, Jin Mori faces Park Ilpyo. Mori and Ilpyo engage in a fierce battle, but Ilpyo comments that Mori's taekwondo techniques won't be enough to win. Both of them utilize their unique techniques, but the wear and tear begin to affect Mori, making it a challenging struggle to continue. Munji fails to stop the god's sword, but a seemingly homeless man named Halyang Seo joins the battle and unleashes a divine artifact that halts the sword. Mori stood firm, with blazing determination in his eyes as he faced Ilpyo. His opponent's disparaging words mentioning his grandfather were like a fire that fueled his spirit. He wouldn't allow himself to be underestimated, not when so many memories and teachings from his beloved grandfather were at stake. With a cry of determination, Mori unleashed the Moonlight Sword technique, a skill he had perfected over years of training. The flash of his sword cut through the air with overwhelming force, challenging Ilpyo to stay on his feet, but Ilpyo didn't fall behind. In a desperate final effort, Mori channeled one of Daewoo's techniques, a friend whose friendship he had forged in tough battles. Mori's movements became more fluid and powerful, as if he had inherited Daewoo's strength in that crucial moment. However, Ilpyo's astonishing power had not reached its limit. In a burst of energy, his hair turned as white as snow, and wolf ears sprouted from his head. The transformation left Mori breathless as the true extent of Ilpyo's power was revealed. The key, the mysterious object that had been the center of their conflict, finally seemed to have fully awakened. The showdown between Mori and Ilpyo was far from over, and the fate of all hung in the balance as the two fighters continued their epic battle. In the celestial realm, during the mythological era, A nine-tailed fox attained immense power after a millennium of training. It was entrusted with protecting the August Jade and faced countless crises by its side. However, the August Jade came to fear it and eventually ordered the fox's execution. Betrayal enraged the fox, and it destroyed half of the celestial realm before descending to Earth. The fox had expended all its power, but vowed to avenge itself against the August Jade and fell into a long slumber. The battle between Maury and Ilpio reaches its climax, with Ilpio transformed into a powerful figure with the spirit of the wolf. Maury attacks with determination, but his blows seem to have no effect on Ilpio in his current form. Ilpio is now twice as strong, and Maury's attacks don't affect him at all. However, in the midst of the intense fight, Maury's eyes change color, as if something inside him has awakened. He harnesses all his power to dispel the fire surrounding Ilpio and causes the roof of the ring to vanish, leaving only clouds in its place. At that moment, the power of the wolf disappears from Ilpio, leaving only the Ilpio that everyone knew. Finally, Maury emerges as the winner of the tournament, surprising everyone present. Munji, who was battling Mandeok, can't believe that Maury defeated the nine-tailed spirit and wonders about the nature of that spirit. Meanwhile, despite his defeat, Ilpio doesn't feel sad, as he fulfilled a part of his promise by helping Maury. Shunga scolds them for their childish behavior and urges them to recover quickly. Maury gets ready to go to sleep, and Ilpio tells him that he's older than him and can call him little brother. Ilpio wants to share something with him. Maury opens up about his missing grandfather and his determination to win the tournament to obtain information about his whereabouts. Ilpio warns him about his upcoming opponent, Lake, and his ruthless brutality. Lake faces John Jugok, who is determined to defeat him. However, Lake proves to be a fearsome beast that absorbs people and becomes stronger. The showdown ended with Lake defeating Jugok, but the price was high. The girl lost a leg, and the boy lost an arm. Ilpio, consumed by devastation and anger, rushed towards Lake, determined to avenge his friends and himself in a final clash of unleashed emotions. Chaos enveloped the god of high school tournament as Mandeok, with a majestic gesture, unleashed his divine power and summoned hundreds of thousands of celestial creatures to carry out his purification plan. The sky darkened with the arrival of these mysterious species, some with radiant wings and others with more menacing appearances. Participants and spectators were left in awe of the magnitude of the event. The stadium turned into an epic battlefield as fighters, who were once rivals, now joined forces to confront this unimaginable threat. The most extraordinary abilities and techniques were unleashed in a desperate attempt to survive. The audience, astonished and frightened, watched as an epic battle between good and evil unfolded amidst the competition. The key, the mysterious object that had been the center of attention throughout the tournament, was at stake like never before. The fate of the world hung by a thread as the confrontation between Mandeok and those resisting his power played out on an unprecedented scale. Park Mujin announces that the tournament ends at that moment. Mandeok invokes an almighty deity who plans to give humanity a fresh start, which he deems necessary. His objective is to make contact with the key to achieve this, which would result in the disappearance of the entire world. Jugok's grandfather swears to avenge his death at any cost, while Lake, after his defeat at the hands of Ilpio, vows to become the strongest and kills the elder who raised him. Amidst the chaos, Ilpio unleashes the power of his chariot and battles Lake, who conjures beasts to confront him. The deity descends ever closer, and contact with the key is imminent. Lake and Ilpio continue their fierce battle, and Lake creates a giant beast that engulfs them both before exploding and releasing them. The key separates from Ilpio's body, but a divine creature retrieves it. The six try to seize the key, but it ultimately ends up in Maury's hands. The United States launches missiles in an attempt to stop the summoning of the deity, but instead of helping, it further complicates the situation. Munji transports some people to a parallel universe to protect them, while warning others about the incoming missiles. Lake and Maury continue their struggle for the magical key as the city remains in peril. Munji stays in Seoul and uses the missiles to destroy the summoned deity and the members of Nox, sacrificing his own life in the process. Finally, in the midst of the battle, Lake and Maury return to Seoul, where the situation remains critical. The final showdown between Maury and Lake reached epic proportions as Lake seized the key, transformed into a baby, and then into a deity within seconds. No one seemed capable of harming him, as a deity, Lake was incredibly powerful and virtually invulnerable. However, Maury didn't give up and rushed towards Lake, asserting that he was no longer the same person as before. The battle escalated even further when Daiwi and Mira joined the fight. During the confrontation, Maury was injured, and Mira took him to a safe place to examine his wounds. At that moment, something astonishing happened. Maury began to remember his true identity, and a crown appeared on his head. A great weapon fell from the sky, and his eyes turned blue. Mandeok, who was observing the battle, recognized Maury as Kiti and Dasheng, the key, as he was the guardian of the key. Maury and Lake continued their fierce showdown, both demonstrating astonishing abilities. The speed of their fight was so dizzying that it was almost impossible to follow with the naked eye. Maury finally managed to defeat Lake, and at that moment, Lake invoked the power of the clouds in the sky, causing lightning to strike him. What made Maury even more special is that, unlike people who use Chariok, he didn't rely on the power of gods. He himself was a deity, the Monkey King. Despite the apparent victory over Lake, he transformed into a gigantic monster. Maury was severely weakened and in no condition to fight. He was hungry. However, Ilpio joined Mira, Daiwi, and Maury in the battle against the giant monster. Finally, working together, they managed to defeat the monster and put an end to Lake's threat. The story concludes with an emotional twist. As Lake was about to be devoured by one of his own monsters, he remembered a traumatic moment from his childhood when his mother abandoned him, sold him, and left him with an elderly man. Ilpio offered to save him, but Lake refused, and he was ultimately devoured by the monster he had created. After Lake's defeat, a fragment of the key that had been in his possession was discovered. Lake's companion, who had previously attacked Daiwi, found herself lost in a cave when a letter from the Six appeared before her, followed by a large door. The member of the Six, Kim, who is the progenitor of the world and has the power to grant any wish except for resurrecting the dead, appeared. Despite the chaotic and destructive circumstances surrounding the end of the tournament, Kim announced that Mira, Maury, and Daiwi were the winners of the God High Schools. Maury had initially planned to ask for the location of his grandfather, but upon seeing his friends who had lost limbs in the battle, he decided to use his wish to heal all the wounded and restore their limbs. However, Kim, because she had been awakened 2 weeks earlier than planned, didn't have enough power and shrank into a child before leaving. Before departing, Kim revealed to Maury that his grandfather Taejin was still alive, albeit weak. This news thrilled Maury, but the exhaustion from using his wish caused him to faint. The story moves forward 3 months after these events, and everything has returned to normal. Our protagonists are determined to continue improving and strengthening themselves, and Maury promises to find his grandfather Taejin in the hope of reuniting with him. The end! Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and click the bell icon to get new anime recaps.